I know a mother who has been learning about real love and bit by bit, as most do when they learn these principles, applying them in her own life and in the life of her children. She complained that she was feeling overwhelmed as a single mother, and being a parent at all can be overwhelming, whether you have one child or 10, and whether you're a single parent or you're a partner to a parent. Parenting's tough. But she was in the process of divorcing her ex. I guess they'd really separated homes for some time and just finishing the divorce. And as her ex was disappearing from their lives as a kind of parting gift, sarcasm intended, he bought their teenage daughter a horse. Why he stopped at a horse, I have no idea. Why not a rhinoceros or an elephant? But he got her a horse. Well, naturally, she liked the horse. And she did that so that she would remember him and love him. This isn't something I'm guessing at. It's just something I know to be true. You can imagine, though, because he gave the daughter the horse, who then went to live with her mother. And Dad just disappeared. So imagine having your daughter arrive with a horse in tow. It's not like you can put it in the closet and feed it hot dogs through the keyhole. What a burden. The horse has to be housed. It couldn't be housed in their apartment complex. So it was housed at a farm like 30 minutes away, had to be fed, has to be trained. It took hours a day that the mother didn't have before. Where were these supposed to come from? Because she was in the middle of developing her own business. She said this: it's evolved into a nightmare. There's so much that has to be done. She, meaning the daughter, and the horse need just too much time. And I never do enough. No matter what I do, she, the daughter, is demanding and disrespectful. So I said, stop talking. Shh. And we're going to look at the words you've used so far, just in 4 sentences or whatever that is. You said, it's just evolved into a nightmare. Now, you say this as though you had no choice. Evolved like, weather evolves from sun heating the earth's crust or the water or the air. It just evolved. You had no choice. So it happened to you. In other words, you were victimized. You said stuff has to be done. That's a truly terrible word that people should actually have to take a special course to be permitted to use, because we misuse it all the time. Oh, I have to do this. Really? According to what law? I have to go Christmas shopping. You get the point. It's just a perfect description of being burdened. So you say stuff has to be done. Again, implying that you have no choice and that you're being victimized. And then you said that your daughter is being demanding and disrespectful no matter what I do, implying first that you've done everything that can be done, which would be pretty unlikely. And second, that no matter what you do, you are once again trapped and victimized. So look at this picture you've created. You're just trapped and victimized at every turn. Now, speaking to those who are listening, the thing is, this woman really does have a history of being victimized. From the time she was a child, neglected, alone, mistreated. There was nothing she could do about it. And as a child, she was a genuine victim. Anytime we fail to love a child, that child is victimized. Her ex-husband was a nightmare, crazy, off-the-wall narcissist. And she was genuinely victimized by him because she'd been prepared to be victimized all of her life by her parents and others. She marries her husband. Well, she was just a mark that he could see from 100 miles. And so with all of this training, childhood, adolescence, her now ex-husband, her entire nervous system had learned a victim mindset. She was hypervigilant toward everything and just felt like she was in a cage all the time. I've talked about these experiments before, but they've done experiments with dogs where they've trained them to feel victimized and helpless. And then even when they open the door to the cage and they administer shocks to the bottom of the cage, the dog just lies there and whimpers. The mindset of being victimized and helpless is so real. The neurologic condition is so physiologic. The dog really doesn't even see that the door's open, and he could get up and jump over, I think it's, if I remember right, it was just a little part of the wire cage that was like this high that he could pretty much roll over. We do that as human beings. But there's a really big difference, especially for humans, between being victimized, which is unavoidable. Like I said, every kid who's not loved is genuinely victimized. And then as an adult, continuing to feel victimized. I get victimized every day. Every day somebody does something unfair, unjust. I go to the hardware store. I ask for 12 bags of concrete. They load 11. I get home. Turns out I actually need 12. So was I victimized? Yes, by somebody who was careless, thoughtless, charged me for 12, gave me 11. So was I treated unfairly? Yes. Would that meet the definition of being victimized? Yes. But I have a choice about whether I feel victimized. Most of us don't, though. If we've been victimized all of our lives, we can't see another choice. Like the dog in the cage can't see the way out, even though the door's open. Most of us live in cages all of our lives that are not locked. But we don't know that. So I said to her, so yes, you've been victimized in the past. You've even been victimized by this gift, curse really, of having a horse. But now you have a choice. She said, I don't see how. I said, you get to choose how much time you spend with your daughter and the horse every day. You get to make that choice, really. You tell her how much time each day. For example, you tell her today exactly how much time you have to spare to give to her and the horse, including travel and everything, tomorrow. You tell her how much horse time there's going to be tomorrow. How much time do you presently spend helping her to get to the horse, ride the horse, whatever you do to horses, brush them, I think the word is curry, muck out the stalls, waiting in the car for her while she takes lessons. How long do you spend in a day? She said, about 4 hours. I had to almost stop breathing. That's half a full-time job, taking care of a horse, which in the old days, you sort of had to take care of your horse because, well, your horse was your means of transportation, or in some cases, the animal that pulled your plow. Horses now are pretty much a luxury enjoyed by those who are wealthy. You don't see them in low-income projects, for example. I said, how much time could you reasonably give to her and the horse and not neglect your business, which you're trying to develop, which you've complained that you don't have time to develop, and not neglect your own mental health? She had to think about that and admitted her answer had to be a guess, because how could she know? She's always just done what everybody told her to do. She's always been a prisoner. So how would she know how to estimate how much time it would require for her not to feel like a prisoner? She wouldn't. But she said, probably 2 hours. I said, well, then you have a choice. You tell her today that tomorrow she gets 2 hours. Oh, I couldn't do that. She said, she'll get very angry. Ah, perfect. Now we're going to address all the problems that you mentioned, all in one breath, virtually. Now you get to limit your time commitment, and you get to teach her the principles that you mentioned that she has not learned, to be respectful and not to be demanding, to learn gratitude and respect. So what a 2-for-1. You tell her that you'll be spending 2 hours with her tomorrow. Now, listen slowly, because you're the one with the problem. I'm not. I have nothing invested in how much time this horse gets, whether the horse gets no time or the horse gets all day with your daughter. So I don't have an agenda. It's usually a good idea to listen to somebody who doesn't have an agenda. My agenda is your mental health, because without you being happy and whole, everybody dies. You're not healthy. Your daughter can't feel loved and happy. So we've got to attend to you. So you tell her 2 hours tomorrow. If she squeals and whines, which I anticipate, and every parent knows the sound of this, what? We've all heard that sound, and which is very likely not only the word, but the tone that she's going to use. Then you calmly and kindly say, okay, so now instead of it being 2 hours, it will be 90 minutes because you're whining and complaining and apparently not learning anything about respect, kindness, consideration, gratitude, nothing. So I'm going to teach you that. If she gives you more lip, you say, well, now it will be an hour. She said, Mother, but if I make it an hour, we'll barely have time to get to the horse stables and back. Barely. That would be a full hour with no time with the horse. And I said, then that's exactly what you have to do. Drive all the way there with her in the car. Don't even stop. Just turn around in the parking lot and come back home. She's very likely to remember that experience, isn't she? Whereas when you say to her, you can't talk to me like that disrespectfully because I've heard you describe it, what difference has that ever made? Her feeling entitled, when you tell her that she's entitled, what difference has that ever made? None. But going to the horse stables and turning around in the parking lot, yep, she's going to remember that. Now, she's very likely going to scream and cry too, but then you just tell her that the next day, instead of 60 minutes, it'll be 30 minutes. And if she screams, well, we won't even get to the horse stables, you go, well, obviously not. So we'll just turn around sooner, halfway here. Eventually, as the time gets less and less, she's going to get to 0, and now you won't even need to leave the house. If you vary from this plan, she's going to continue being entitled and lost and confused. And it will be because you are teaching her to be those things. You didn't mean to. And before understanding, loving, and teaching, you didn't really even have a choice. But now you do. As it is now, she'll do anything to stay entitled and in control because it's all she has. She doesn't have unconditional love in her life yet, so being entitled and being in control is her role in life. She will not learn gratitude. She will not learn respect for anybody else. This isn't about respecting you. This isn't about you being the queen. It's about her learning what it means to be grateful at all, to be respectful to humans. She's not going to learn that until there's a price for her being snotty. Until she starts paying a price, till she enjoys the consequence of the decisions she makes, she's going to keep making entitled and snotty decisions. And in fact, you keep going with this because I have done this with parents before with pick a thing. Horses, dogs, motorcycles, cars, pick it. Cell phones, they get less time and less time. And if they keep it up, then eventually you just, one day when she says, well, what time are we leaving? You say, for where? Well, to go see the horse. Oh, well, we won't need to because I've sold the horse. Not kidding. The most important thing in this young lady's life is that she learn those qualities that will enable her to be happy for all of her life, to feel loved, to be loving, to be responsible. And right now, she's not learning any of them. So her life education is suffering badly. Loving and teaching is sometimes really difficult. That's why so few parents do it, because most children kick and scream when they realize that they're not going to be the parent anymore. But the alternative is much worse, which is children who are entitled, spoiled, and, well, ruined for life. They can't hold jobs. They can't have relationships because it turns out it's pretty hard to find partners who will allow you to just use them and treat them like garbage. As you rigorously, diligently, consistently implement zero tolerance for whining and complaining with your daughter. I've done this with thousands of families. As you do this, not only will you teach your daughter these principles, but you will become stronger. You will feel more who you are. You've been looking for that all of your life. You will feel less trapped and victimized, which right now just makes you miserable. The bottom line is, darling, as you teach your daughter to be happy, you will be too. Everything is better. Just kind of parenthetically at the end, as I was talking about the horse, the mother also mentioned that another burden in her life is, now, I've never had to take care of a horse, but I can imagine this. Having been in a barnyard before, you go out riding a horse, everything gets filthy and stinks to high heaven because, well, you get horse sweat, horse hair, horse everything all over you. And it turns out that the mother has also not only been taking the daughter there for hours, but been doing all the laundry for the girl and the horse. No. So the assignment is to the daughter, no more whining, no more complaining of any kind, no more of the mother washing things, no more attitude. Children don't learn to be responsible and grateful accidentally. And if we don't do it, who's going to? Big lesson, really important lesson. Few of you listening to this are going to ever own a horse, but everything I've said still applies to you and your children. Everything. The horse is just emblematic, just a symbol. New subject. I know a woman, Karen, who has lived in fear all of her life. You can imagine how she functioned as a wife and mother. Her marriage was unhappy. One son was just miserable, and in fact is miserable still as an adult. He lives on government subsidy in a room in somebody's house. He's depressed. He won't take his medication. He won't go to therapy. He won't look for a job. He won't get counseling. He just sits in a room and plays video games and does absolutely nothing. He was living with the mom, Karen, and her husband, but he complained constantly, argued, demanded more and more time, money, travel, whatever. He was impossible. And he was dragging Karen into depression with him. So at my suggestion, she required that he leave. And since he got government subsidy, he could leave and wasn't dispossessed and thrown into the river. He found a place to stay. He just wasn't given everything like he was being given at home. He was much like the girl with the horse. I mean, laundry being done, sit there and play video games and have dinner delivered to you. I mean, what a deal. Since then, the son texts her like daily and leaves messages on her phone, endlessly demanding time with her, that he be able to come over and stay for just a day or two, which we all know is going to turn into, a lifetime or two. Food, talking, conversation. But see, all he ever does is complain. And demand more and talk about how everything is unfair and talk about how she doesn't take care of him anymore and doesn't do his laundry and how his sheets haven't been washed in 2 years. She can't handle the emotional load of her son constantly demanding all of those things. Her time, complaining, it just sets her on edge if she's got PTSD from all the years that he's already done it. Her husband, Karen's husband, can't believe that she is so heartless, and in fact has said that to her. How could you be so heartless as to not spend more time with your son? Well, because it's like living with Eeyore, Eeyore who makes constant demands. She asked me what she could say to her son when he texts to demand to know why that she's avoiding him. And I recommended something like this. There are uncounted thousands of people out there listening right now who have adult children, and they have no idea what to say to these adult kids. When the adult kids demand more time, money, vacations, car, whatever, I would suggest that you say to him, Fred, but I can't remember his name, I love you. Always loved you. You're my son. You always will be. Right now, you're refusing to take responsibility for your life, not your mental health, not a job, not anything. And what you want me to do is to save you. I'm just not strong enough to do that. And even if I were, it would just cripple you. It would just enable you. So I love you enough not to save you. That is a real mother's love, not saving her children. Saving your 2-year-old from being run over in the highway, that's a good idea. Saving a 30-year-old who does absolutely nothing in his life, not such a good idea. I continued with the message that I suggested that she give to him. You may call that avoiding you, but it's really an attempt to help you take more responsibility for yourself. End quote. That's just one thing you could say. There are endless variations. I could write 20 in an hour. If she helped him, he would have a place to stay. But that's all. He already has a place to stay. It just would be easier for him. He'd have easier meals served to him. And in the process, she would drown. She's at the edge of drowning already. He wouldn't be any happier. So let's look at the score. If she spends the time with him that he demands, she drowns. He won't be happy. So far, I've got zeros. The dad who says, how can you be so heartless, hated every second that the son was at home because all he did was complain and demand. 0. That's 3 zeros that I can count. We can keep going. Nobody wins. These are hard choices. Being a parent is tough. This is another case, and we talked about this, I think, in the last video chat, where I talked about how, like, I gave an example of a man on Mount Everest. I think I gave another example where you can actually die from niceness. And this is another case where nice would lead only to more long-term pain. Nice is not the same as loving. Nice can be part of loving, but by itself it turns into enabling. It's what you are to a pet, not to a child. New subject. It's common for people to refer to the sacrifices that they make in their relationships. And that is certainly accepted as a good thing most of the time. The problem arises with the generally accepted use of the word sacrifice. Sacrifice, if you go to any dictionary there is, and if you ask pretty much anybody, sacrifice implies giving something up. Otherwise, it's not a sacrifice. It implies some kind of loss. It's not a sacrifice for me to eat my dinner, for example. It's often, in fact, a painful loss. The dictionary even defines the word sacrifice using descriptors like destruction, surrender, a form of giving up, loss, deprivation. Yes, sometimes for the sake of something higher, but still a sense of loss. And I'm not going to argue with the dictionary here. The problem is people tend to resent loss. They do. They can't keep doing it without an attachment to what they lose. They want either what they gave up returned, or they want to be paid in some way. They want to trade. So I'm just making a suggestion, a relationship suggestion, not a change of the definition of the word in the dictionary. What if instead of sacrificing for those we love, giving up something, like the mother we just talked about, who would pretty much have to give up her life to make her son actually not even happy. What if instead of giving something up, we simply give to them as a gift without condition? When I give somebody something, my time, energy, resources, whatever, as an unconditional gift, do you know it never, ever feels like a sacrifice to me? Never does. What if I just give as an element of my being loving? I just offer as a thought. I have found it very useful in my own life, as have many others. New subject. When I first met Nina, she appeared to be, I think the word might even be unredeemable. She had grown up sad and completely alone. Her mother was certifiably, well, actually, not just certifiably, but certified insane and had been in and out of institutions. She made a living at times in some rather, unusual ways, and I suppose what many people would call socially unacceptable ways, including as an escort, a prostitute, used drugs and alcohol. She had a tough life. Somehow she managed to get it all together long enough to actually become a certified professional, a healthcare professional, which is amazing. That didn't last very long because most healthcare professionals have an increased access to drugs and alcohol, and well, at least to drugs. I can't say that in a hospital alcohol is more available. And those got the better of her, and she lost her certification. When I met her, she was alone. She was living with her cats in a single room in a boarding house with no money, sometimes not enough to eat, and on occasion would tie plastic bags over her head in an attempt to kill herself. She said, and I couldn't even do that right. I didn't teach her a more effective way to tie plastic bags over her head. She was just clearly at the end of living. With loving and teaching, she began to recover emotionally. I suggested she get a job, as much for her sense of worth as income. In fact, in the beginning, I very often suggest to people who have been homeless, lost, confused, disoriented, that they get a job. And almost invariably, the reaction is, oh, you're just like everybody else. You want me to get a job so that I'll be responsible. Or so that I'll make my own living. That's not really most of my reason. No. In order to be happy, we have to feel loved, we have to be loving, and we have to be generally responsible for our own behavior. Having a job contributes to our sense of well-being, our sense of worth, our sense of value. It gives us a role in life. We just feel better about ourselves when we're responsible. She said, well, with my certification lapsed, I couldn't possibly get a job. So I suggested that she volunteer in a clinic where she could regain some of her skills, professional skills, under the supervision of other nurses without pay. Here's the amazing part. She did that. Every person that I've ever made that suggestion to, other than I think a couple ever in my life, have said, you want me to work for nothing? I make more living on government assistance. So why would I get a volunteer job? In other words, why would I want to be responsible? She realized that she would still get her government assistance, so she'd be able to live, barely, but that she would get skills, she would be able to recertify, and she would be able to practice being herself. That's the biggest reason to get a job. She did. It really takes guts to be that humble, because she had to go to this place and say, I want to serve as a volunteer because I've lost my certification and I'm going to work at no pay. And she did that for a year, supported by government assistance for people with no income, mental problems, medical problems, and she had plenty of all of that. After a year, the clinic liked her so much that they hired her as a paid employee. And since then, she's gotten a raise. Now she works full-time, has a part-time job in addition, and is getting her entire life in order. It's impressive. It's impressive to see what people can do when they see choices. This woman never saw that she even had a choice before. And when they feel loved enough that they gain the capacity to make those choices. She's a living miracle. And it all started with her feeling loved, with her trusting that she was loved, acting on that trust, saying yes to pretty much everything, then building confidence that can only come from making choices. You can be loved unconditionally. You cannot gain confidence or experience unconditionally. No, that takes work and it takes risk. Miracles happen with love. She's just one example. New subject. It's very common for me to hear from people that they are in a relationship with a partner who repeats himself or herself. And I know a lot of people like that. They say something once, then they say it again, then they say it again. And the partner that I'm talking to says, it just makes me crazy. They ask, why does the other person repeat himself? And what can I do about it? So first, why do people repeat themselves? Almost always, it's because they've never been thoroughly heard. Nobody's ever really listened to them. I've had this experience many times in my life where I've actually listened to somebody with my eyes, with my ears, with the words that I say to get more information, perhaps with a touch, perhaps with posture, lots of ways that you can indicate that you're listening, and had people break into tears and say, nobody's ever listened to me in my life. That's how unusual genuine listening is. That's the most common reason for people to repeat themselves. So with their many words, they effectively demand to be heard. Now, what's the effect of this repetition? First, it gives a sense of power to the person who's repeating. It can be pretty intimidating. If you've ever been around somebody who just pounds you with the same story over and over again, they just take over the room. Nobody dares to interrupt. In fact, many of these people have perfected the art of being able to speak while they're exhaling and inhaling. They never stop talking. I have talked to people on Skype and on phone where I've looked for a quarter-second break to say something and realized there isn't one. They're that intent on speaking. Second, repeating statements or words is like emotional hitting. The first time people realize that, it's pretty humbling to the person who's the hitter, and it's quite a revelation to their partner. You repeat yourself over and over again. Here's what you need to do. Here's why you need to do this. Here's what you need to do again. It's like being pounded over and over. It's punishing, almost always unconscious, but it becomes hurtful. I can't tell you how often people feel crushed, partners especially, by the repetition of their partner. And last, it's isolating to the repeater, because people get tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, doesn't it bug you just that I said the word over 3 times in a row? These people can tell their stories till you drop over. So they end up isolated. What's the solution? If you're the repeater, if you happen to recognize as I'm speaking here that you're the one that repeats yourself, which is not likely, it's really hard to get somebody who repeats themselves to see that they do it. But if you recognize yourself as the repeater, just be more aware that you do it. But there's so much pain involved in repeating that most people just can't see it. What if you're the listener? When your partner starts to tell a story, you can tell when the repeat is starting, unless you're asleep. They tell a story and then they tell it in a slightly different way. The instant that the second iteration begins, the first repeat, summarize what they said. So you say, so what you just said is, and you summarize either what they want, or the place that they were, or the conversation that they had, or the movie they watched, or the whatever it is. Repeaters will repeat anything many times. And then say, was I listening to you? Or say, have I got it? In the first place, that's usually very stunning to somebody who repeats themselves, and they very often stop talking. If they do keep talking, and it becomes that pounding kind of intimidation, then you say, so have I got it? Did I understand what you said? Well, yes, but, and then they go to repeat it, and you go, I've got it. I don't need to hear it again. After a while, it becomes an emotional assault, and you don't have to sit still while it happens. In fact, if you do, well, you kind of deserve it once you realize you have a choice. New subject. I know a couple who have been together for several years. When I saw them, they were having difficulties being close. Now, there's a lot to that story, but we'll illustrate with just one part of what divided them. She's retired and brought some money with her. She inherited some money. She had a little bit of money from retirement from the place that she worked. She wasn't wealthy, but she had more than her partner. He came to the relationship with actually moderate debt. Not awful, not enough to cancel out what she had, not even close, but moderate debt, but debt that was decreasing, not increasing. They both said that they looked forward to spending time together as a couple. They were both getting not older, not retirement home old, but both getting older, and said they wanted to spend time together, even to travel. And she even said that she hated it that they couldn't do things together, just spend time and travel and whatever. Well, so I said, so why don't you? And she kept repeating over and over, odd, we just talked about repeating, like a skipping record, that first he needed to keep his full-time job until he paid off his debt. You're hearing the separation, aren't you? This isn't we. This is him, his debt, and me and my money. And they had had a conversation once where they agreed that he would do that he would pay off his debt before they combined their finances. But remember, what did she state was her primary goal? To spend time with him and travel and have fun. Well, then he got laid off, which would increase the time to eliminate the debt by a lot, because all he could do now is work part-time. In fact, it could increase it from what had previously been maybe 6 months. Like I said, his debt wasn't overwhelming, to probably years. So it turns out that between them, between what little money he has in his checking account and what money she has saved and inherited, they do have enough money in assets and in side income to retire. They can do this. She complains all the time that they don't travel, but it turns out they can. The only thing keeping them from doing that is her insistence on him filling his obligation. And no matter how I talked about this, she kept repeating, but we had an agreement. So I finally put my hand up and I said, stop talking till I'm done. Hear it at least once, because your partner is too afraid of you to say this. She's one of those who intimidates with words. So I said 2 things. First, to her, you are choking on one word in your head, just one word. This one word is just choking your soul. You've said it out loud only once, but you've said it at least 10 times in this conversation with other words, like when you say, he doesn't, he hasn't, backing out, we had an agreement. What's the word you're choking on? She couldn't identify it. Said, fair. And she looked like I'd hit her with a frying pan. And her partner, he was over there just going, nodding his head like a bobble-headed doll. I said, you think your finances should be fair? That word will kill you. There is no fair in a partnership. There's no such thing. There's just a partnership. Donna, my partner, does way more of some things than I do. I do more of some things. We don't sit and figure out, now, let's put numbers on this. Is it fair that you do more of this and that I do more of that? No. Who writes the most video chats? Well, who spends the most time setting up the cameras for the video chats? You'll be dead if you get into arguments like that. Who cares? She brings everything she has to our partnership. How do you bring more? No, really, what's after everything? I really want to know. I was asking her this. I said, and I bring everything I have to our partnership. That is what a partnership is. So, second, you guys will never again use this phrase. We had an agreement. Not with me in the room. It's just another way of pounding on the word fair again. I've never seen 2 people ever, in all the years that I've been talking to people about relationships, I've never heard 2 people say, we are so in love because it is so fair. Even the thought just cracks me up. No, we're so in love because we both completely give who we are to our partner. That's love. Now, what will work? And I'm talking to them and I'm talking to all of us. Ask the important questions first. What do you want? Many people don't know how to answer that. Do you want to be happy or not? Do you want to be close or not? Do you want to spend time together or not? What are the big ticket items? And I had them answer those questions. Turns out they wanted to be happy, close, spend time together, travel. There were some other things, but that's how they pictured spending their remaining years. Who knows? 20 years until they're too old to travel. So second, you've established what you want. Can you make that happen? Now, follow these 3 questions because they're important in any partnership. First, what do you want? Second, can you make it happen? Do you have enough financially, emotionally? Finances don't begin to create a relationship. Emotionally, logistically, like as in, you live on the same continent, whatever. Could you make that happen? All those things that you just stated that you want. Now, what's the third question? Because this woman in the relationship has enough money to pay off his debt right this second, and it would hardly make a dent in what she has. So can she make this happen? Yes. But here's the third question. Do you want to make it happen? Because I said, so far, you don't want to. So you say you want to be happy. You can make all those things happy. But it turns out number 3 is actually a repetition of number 1. Do you really want to? Well, apparently not, because you don't. Are you willing to pay the price of your choice? The first question, what you want. And make whatever adjustments. Or, if you like the word that we talked about earlier, sacrifice. Are you willing to do what it takes? She finally said, so what you're saying to me is that I can be fair or I can be happy. Yeah, I really am. And this is true for all of us. Don't ever get mired in that word. Fairness, justice, the piddly little details. Nope. Ask the 3 questions. What do you want? Can you make it happen? And are you willing to pay the price? And if the answer is yes to all 3, well, then you're going to have a spectacular relationship. If you pause on those questions, you're not ready for one. Most people can't even answer the first one, what they want. New subject. I know a man who has been learning real love for several years. He had a relationship with a woman that was distinctly not healthy. And he left it more than once. He'd leave and he'd come back. He spent more time with loving people. He became happier, more peaceful, less clinging, less blaming. He learned the principles of unconditional love. He decided that he wanted to see what it would be like to spend some time with his ex-girlfriend, the one that he had been with and then not with and not with. In fact, these two were just famous for people would meet him and go, so are you presently on or off? Just like that all the time. So he decided, after he learned what it was like to feel unconditionally loved, what would it be like to spend some time with Leah that's just, well, been a disaster so far. He said, I spent the evening with Leah today. It was delightful. She picked me up. We went for a hike. On the way, we chatted, we laughed, we talked. It was easy. It was comfortable. So my previous concerns based on the past about having to second guess what I said or did were totally false. I said, well, this is excellent practice for being yourself. Apparently, you were being yourself because it felt effortless. You didn't second guess yourself. You're not being yourself if you do something and then go, gosh, I wonder if that was right. No, being yourself is just flows. You're letting the past go because you could have ruined the evening analyzing all the mistakes that you'd made. This no second guessing thing is beautiful. Just be you and see what happens. He said, I wanted to talk honestly and practice telling the truth about myself, but I didn't need to make that a project. That's a common mistake that people make in real love. They decide that they're going to change their relationship with their friends or whoever, so they turn telling the truth into this mechanical, somber, onerous, ponderous thing. It's just no fun at all. I mean, it just looks like a technique from top to bottom. He said, I just wanted to practice telling the truth about myself, but not make it a project. So I just relaxed and I just let things be. Imagine that. Instead of proving ourselves, just being ourselves. Ooh, that just sounds attractive. So, in other words, be you, have faith in being you, and gather information about you, about her, about the relationship you're having. And I don't mean, are you going to have one? See, that's thinking into the future. No. How's our relationship in this moment? Are we relating openly, honestly? Does it feel comfortable? Just that kind of information. He continued, On the hike, there was a time that when she wanted to wander off the path doing whatever interesting to her, but I didn't feel compelled to follow her and join in whatever it was that she was doing. Who knows? Look at a tree or a bird's nest or whatever, just to please her. So I sat by the path while she was away for a short time. Oh, that's different for you, because I know you both. In the past, you would have felt so obligated to do everything that she suggested that the two of you do. Then you hated it. She was demanding. She was controlling you. Then, oddly, while she was controlling you, she told you that you were weak because she was controlling you. It was a disaster that you were constantly trying to please her. And here you are, sounds little, but she leaves the path to do something, and you just go, oh, I'll see you in a minute. Ah, lovely. These are the little proofs that you've actually changed, that you've learned something, that you see that you have choices instead of just reacting to obligation. You had a moment of you making your decision and allowing her to make hers. You're being you. Wow. You continue. We talked about some of our experiences in the past, some of our fears, which vanished as we talked about them. It was simple and nice. And while we made no definitive plans to do it again, we just enjoyed the experience we were having that day. That's gathering information. That's what I recommend everybody do when they're considering a relationship with somebody. Don't plan your future and how many kids you're going to have and what you're going to name them. I mean, that's just crazy. And how we're going to address them. Be you, let her be her, gather information. You say, it's strange that I want more because even though I want more of the good feeling we had today, is what you're saying. I don't feel clingy about it. This is new to me. Yes, it is. You're not familiar with, pay attention, everybody who's listening, wanting without clinging. Healthy wanting is a delightful thing. Today, I wanted to get some things done in the backyard and clean some things up and replace a pump that was rusting, and I wanted to do it. And because I wanted to do it, it was fun. And I wanted Donna to come out with me because, I don't know, it's always more fun to have her with me. And she did. But I didn't manipulate her to come out with me. I didn't cling to her. She didn't cling to me. We both offered mutually what we had and had a wonderful time. You're not familiar with wanting without clinging. How could you be? You've spent a lifetime of wanting and not getting. So only if you were clinging were you more likely to get what you want. So of course you were a clinger, except you discovered that clinging doesn't work all that well. People feel manipulated and it feels sort of sucky for you. You conclude, adding anything romantic like sex or planning for the future on top of how we spent our day just became completely unnecessary. More than that, it became kind of silly. Well, this on again, off again relationship might actually stand a chance. We'll see. I have no attachment to whether it makes it or not. But you had an excellent interaction. It was a great day. You had good conversations. You gathered good information. Keep doing that, and you'll find out what you need to know. We can all do that with every decision that we go to make. Be yourself. See what happens when you're just yourself and let other people be themselves and you gather information, because the more information you gather, the better informed you'll be about making the next decision and the one after that. And before long, poof, you've created a life. Who knew? We'll see you in a week.